Hello and welcome to episode 2 of our Astound Digital and Salesforce Industry Insights podcast. I'm Andrew Sinclair from Astound Digital, and this is where we come together with industry experts to discuss what's happening in the market, why it's important to change, and how we can help businesses navigate these transformational times. This podcast series brings together the experts of Astound Digital, a leading digital transformation consultancy, with Salesforce deep industry and product knowledge to provide actionable insights for business leaders who are grappling with the pace of change in today's markets. So today we're focusing on UK manufacturing, a sector that's at a fascinating crossroads. On one hand, we're seeing incredible pressures from geopolitical changes, energy costs and skill shortages. On the other hand, we're seeing an unprecedented amount of opportunity through digital transformation, AI, and new ways of working that could revolutionise how manufacturers operate today. Whether you're a manufacturing leader trying to understand your options, technology professional working within the manufacturing space, or simply someone interested in how digital transformation is reshaping traditional industries, this conversation will give you actionable insights you can leverage moving forward. And I'm joined today by Astound's global CEO, Bill Donlan, and Salesforce's manufacturing leaders, and Chris Burgess and Guy Williamson. Collectively, we have an extensive experience, examples, and innovative ideas, having worked with a multitude of manufacturing enterprises across the globe. So welcome, Bill, Chris, Guy, thank you for joining me today. Really excited about the conversation around UK manufacturing and the exciting advancements of technologies.
So what I'm seeing is a lot of these large manufacturers consume with these things. And then when you go try to have a conversation about agentic or front office transformation, you get our budget's directed towards these big programs.
But it's interesting because, I agree. But what we're seeing is that those conversations need to happen.
Yeah, completely agree with you.
So the companies that we're speaking to are saying they want to think that way, but they are being restricted by those back office elements that need to happen. So how do we help those companies do it? That's probably the biggest thing. And you've got to have those conversations with them about the agentic piece, knowing that that's probably 2-3 years down the line. So I think in the UK, we are seeing exactly the same thing because they're being impacted by the US. So I think it is a really relevant topic to say that they have to solve that back end. So, yeah.
And to your point, I think one of the ways to get them there is to show up with real, tangible, maybe you don't have pre-built, but you've got real, tangible use cases that they can apply. You can come in with some sort of generic ROI calculator, and they can apply their own metrics to it. But what we were talking about, efficiency of service folks, efficiency of salespeople, offloading white space analysis, making human beings more, keeping the person in the middle, but making human beings more efficient. Forget about even going to full autonomous right now. Just offload work, right? I mean,
But we were having this conversation yesterday. We were with an organization yesterday talking about AI. And the first step for them is not about agentic. It's actually just about efficiency. It's just about automating their processes. And I do think that is probably the biggest thing from how do you separate the two, but then connect them together? Because everybody talks about it. The CEO agenda, the CIO agenda is about agentic. So
what's the difference, do you think? So robotic process automation had a similar hype at that moment in time. It was all about automation. It was all about the technology, and it didn't quite capture the market as much as perhaps the agentic AI conversation. What do you think the difference there is in where we are 2-3 years on from that?
I mean, I'll let Guy or Bill answer in a minute, but for me, it's because robotic process automation was very much focused at that middle to bottom level.
Yeah.
Agentic is seen about how do we actually make a difference? How do we move forward? And also, it's been consumerized. It's everywhere. It's not just in the working world. It's taking over the world. It's on every CEO's agenda. So everybody has to do it.
Yeah.
It's not a case of will you, it's when will you. But it's where does it fit in that journey? So that, for me, is the difference from a high level. I mean, Guy, do you have a...
Yeah, I think there's a few things in there. So I think I spent a long time in the industry in sort of the earlier parts of my career. What I've seen in the manufacturing space is those customer organisations tend to have hugely bespoke their previous ECC, R3 implementations. I mean, I know one organisation that allegedly has 1 million lines of code to deal with PLM type activities. those are not easy to unpick. And the migration to a clean core is going to be an exceptionally difficult journey for those organisations. And it will be a mistake for those organisations, I think, on two fronts to say, we've got a programme and we're upgrading to HANA. Because the truth is, as they do that migration, and they're looking, well, actually, this is a business process migration as well. That's going to sit across our landscape and into our supplier landscapes. They're going to have to make large swathes of change across the interfacing systems, the integrated systems. So that's point one. Point two, I think, is those programs are going to take a long time, years and years and years. There isn't a manufacturing business out there that is going to say, we're not delivering change in any of our business functions. They're all going to have to do something to keep up and survive, quite frankly, in the global market at the moment. And I think, when we look at geopolitics and what's happening in different countries, the Chinese, they move fairly quickly.
I totally agree. I just want to go back to something that Andrew said about the robotic realm. Put agents off to the side. I mean, I follow Mark Benioff. We've seen his posts of what's coming with Elon's robots and with what China is doing and the agility to which we're about to hit another revolution there. That's artificial intelligence. That's digital labor. We're going to hit that too. So to your point, better be staying current on how do you improve efficiency, improve top line, improve the performance of your own people, because that's the next wave that's coming. I mean, those things move more agile than most humans do, right?
So I've got maybe some examples on that. So actually, to address the initial question, which was, what's the difference between RPA and agentic? I think RPA was basically codifying some human actions and getting a computer to do it across systems effectively, and potentially swivel chairing between multiple applications and shifting data from one to the other. It wasn't intelligent, it was just automated. Agentic API is different. Agents analyze, think, and then take action. They do something. And that's a huge difference. So that was sort of one point I wanted to make. But robotics is really interesting. So when we talk about manufacturers, they've been using robotics for a long, long time. I was at a production line a year or so ago in Germany, and they'd put 40 autonomous guided vehicles into their facilities, which were not modern facilities in terms of the buildings housing them, but ultra modern sort of inside. And I remember walking around and I asked one of the production staff, are you deploying these to reduce your headcount? And he said, no, it's the opposite. We can't hire forklift drivers fast enough to come into our business. We can't find the people to come and do this work. That's why we're deploying these AGVs. And I think that's quite key in manufacturing as well. We talk about the workforce problem. I don't think this is about replacing people, because if you can't hire the people to do the jobs, you're not replacing anybody. You're just getting work done.
I think circling back to your point, Guy, the point around get moving, get looking, dip your toe in here, get some use cases going. I think, or you'll find yourself outdated, behind, inability to catch up. It's been my experience that the manufacturing industry has been slow to adopt some of these types things, and I think you're right that they need to.
But I think on that, I think they've been slow to adopt, but I don't feel, from what we're seeing with our customer base and conversations we're having, they're not slow to have the conversations. They want to have the conversations. They are looking at not just agentic, but technology as a whole, and how does technology enable them as they go forward?
I think that's an important point, and one that was coming to mind is if you look at other industries, the full adoption of digital transformation, looking at the business from an end-to-end perspective. But they started out with tactical fixes. If you take the banking sector, it was build an app instead of the bank. But then they started to look at full customer journeys, full operating models, and what technology enables that at an enterprise level to really gain the impact and value. Is it fair to say in manufacturing, it's still been an incremental, tactical, 1.1 solution type approach, but we're now moving into that. Let's look at it as an entire exercise.
It is, and that comes back to, I think, to some of Bill's points at the beginning around, what are the challenges? What's at the core of what they do? Manufacturers are making things. That's where they've got to resolve their, how they're more efficient. But it's now, how do they unpick some of the great systems they had to make it more relevant to those middle and front office systems and start to look at it. So it's not through fear of doing it. They're looking at it. It's just the how. And every manufacturer that we speak to, or any organisation actually in that industrial sector, is having the same problem. They don't really know where to start, so they're just not starting anywhere. I think the successful ones, and the points you're making, but there are companies out there doing it. Those are the ones that have just tried it, and they've not been afraid to mess up. It's an industry that wants to get it right before they really try something, and I think that's what we're seeing.
And that's a cultural and mindset thing.
Massively
If you look
cultural,
at a lot of those financial services businesses, the look and feel and the types of people
Yeah.
in those organizations are different. They're actually technology led
Yeah.
in financial services, as they weren't 10 years ago. And actually, if you look at the culture and the mindset and who they're bringing in, that's what it takes to change that kind of legacy culture.
But I mean, a lot of manufacturers, Guy, I'm sure you see it as well, embracing things like digital thread, digital twin, IoT.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wouldn't say that they're behind in technology and those kinds of things, because if they're not doing that, they're not able to predict maintenance and
They're
all the
definitely
things
not
that need to
behind.
be done, right? So
I want to come back to you on that in a second, if I may. So I think the thing around adoption is a really key point, particularly for UK manufacturers. So in 2018, not to give a history lesson, the World Economic Forum and McKinsey started a global lighthouse network in manufacturing with 6 manufacturing sites worldwide, which were seen as the leaders for the adoption of digital technology. And people-centric change. I do want to sort of make that point in here as well. It's not about adoption of tech, it's people-centric change, technology-enabled change. Today there are 200 factories in that global lighthouse network reporting just astounding results, like products to market 50% faster than previous, 70% reduction in defect rates, these types of results, which are absolutely phenomenal. Of those 200 factories, 2 are in the UK, just 2 of them. And when I look at that and look at all this overwhelming evidence from around the world around the benefits of adoption of digital technologies leading on to AI, why are we so slow in the UK? It is a cultural piece. There's a lot going on in the UK at the moment. We've had, not just in manufacturing, but some fairly well publicised cyber incidents at the moment that have been almost existential for those organisations who've had them, certainly cost them hundreds of millions of pounds. We've got trade headwinds, geopolitical issues, access to capital. Whilst digital technology is transformational, it's also a barrier in some ways, in terms of how you get past the pilot purgatory into a scaled up system across the business.
great points, by the way.
Yeah, great point.
Thank you.
Biggest driver for digital transformation is either opportunities or threats. What would you all see as those opportunities or threats within the manufacturing industry specifically?
So for me, if I look at this, if I think about, just take the automotive industry, for example.
Yeah.
I think I saw an article this morning that BYD now has 100 dealers in its network just in the UK. And they've done that in less than 5 years. It's phenomenal progress, and they're going to sell. They move so much faster than we have. And particularly with electric vehicles, they've done that because the architecture on the vehicle is fundamentally different. They can bring a car to market significantly faster. They're vertically integrated in terms of how they build that. And then we look at the UK and maybe the American manufacturers as well, the European manufacturers, and they're still stuck in 7-year product life cycles. It's like, right, it's every 7 years we're going to release a vehicle. Maybe it's 10. We'll have a bit of a facelift after 3. That people will still buy that. That's gone.
Yeah.
We're going to lose if we don't think and change fairly radically. And your point on the digital thread. So I'm writing a paper at the moment within Salesforce, and this is my fundamental point actually, which is whilst manufacturers have made progress towards the digital thread and closed loop manufacturing, allowing the circular economy, nobody's nailed it. They're not completely there. And the reason they can't is because actually it takes a lot of thinking and work to close the loop, to have the perfect digital thread through your organization. And so much data is created on a shop floor from a vehicle that people alone can't process and understand that. So for me, that's where agentic AI comes in, not to replace workers, but to augment them, to help them think through problems, analyze it, take action. And if in the digital thread, if the digital thread can be enabled by agents taking relatively low-level action, whatever that is, we've noticed that there's a trend in the failure of a particular part on a vehicle or a product or whatever it is in the field. That's going to be picked up and recognised by agentic AI. That's going to get together the relevant engineering team, the relevant manufacturing team, the team from the supply chain partner who provided the product or the sub-assembly, whatever it is. You can bring that together through agentic AI in hours rather than weeks or months. The problem's solved much faster. Sorry.
No, that's fine. But I think on that, so I agree, but also at the same time, I think it's bigger than that. I think the opportunity is not just the agentic AI, and I think we've got to move broader than that.
Yeah.
I think it's really more around the collaboration, the digital collaboration across the ecosystems for these organizations from within their own business, across their supply chain, but also through the technology vendors. I mean, the proliferation of, what we're doing with tech, how fast it's moving. Not one tech vendor can do everything. Agentic is not, just Salesforce. It's every part of agentic, but it's also the IoT. It's how do we, as two companies in the technology space, help these manufacturers realize there's a journey to connect everything together. So yes, I agree with everything you said, but let's just broaden it and let's help our customers broaden that scope of how do we bring it all together. It's not easy, but the thing is that's quite a common challenge that we're seeing. I think everything we talked about here has been that common challenge of how do we do that. So that would just be my thoughts on that.
I think Guy's point is, I agree completely too, that I think manufacturers figured out how to capture the data before they figured out what to do with the data. So your scenario of a car manufacturer and all the vehicles, I mean, think about, jet engine manufacturer. You fly a 5-hour flight, a gigabyte of data per engine, twin engine plane, 10 gigabytes of data for one flight.
It's like petabytes.
And then to your point, we got to get into how do we coexist? Because Salesforce could be handling the customer interaction, that part of the agent, but we can invoke GCP or AWS to go through all of the data that has been accumulated and is already living in the hyperscaler world, right? To solve these. That's where I think it goes back to actually showing up with some use cases and maybe even some lightweight IP accelerators. Hey, we think the business case is this, but let's talk about your situation. But here's some proposed solutions. And you can start with easy things. Initiate my RMA through Agentforce. I want to set up an installation for a manufacturer of some sort of goods. Then you can get into some of these more complicated, interrogate asset data from an IoT scenario, right? Look at prediction, maintenance patterns, those kinds of things.
Yeah, it really is. It's taking some of that fantastic silo data that no one's really done a great deal with, and just trying stuff with it, connecting up the data, seeing what comes from it, and then not having to fully bake that whole strategy across the chain and just get started is probably something that we're seeing.
Yeah, I think there's a few things in there. So I think we take away the sort of excitement and the hype around agentic AI. It's another technology. And the thing I've learned over the however many years it's been in technology is it's around governance, it's around enabling the transformation, encouraging innovation in your organization, but fundamentally understanding what's going on, what it's going to do, and where the benefit's going to come from. And I don't think agentic AI is going to be any different from that. We're already seeing customers live with Agentforce, the Salesforce solution. And whilst the overall capability of the solution is huge and very powerful and very deep, they're fairly simple tasks that have gone live now. So we've seen service management, for example. So manufacturers go from accurate customer responses in hours to minutes. Availability of information across the board in manufacturing, service teams and out to customers. It improves customer satisfaction, which is a board level item, even if it's not the primary one. But I think when manufacturers get confidence that actually we've seen this agentic AI deliver value, we see the value from it, we can do more with the same, we can redeploy resources, we become more intelligent as an organization, that's when the capability will spread. What I think is interesting around this agentic piece is, in the same way that every manufacturing organization has multiple technology vendors in their IT landscape, I think ultimately we're going to see multiple agentic AI solutions in each landscape, which is fine. They're going to talk to each other through, I'm not the expert, but MCP, whatever it is. But critical for me, I think, is well, what is the collaboration layer within a manufacturing organisation at the moment? Because it's, let's face it, it's email or it's paper, or Bob is running to Claire on the other end of the production line and saying, we've got a production line issue, go and get Claire, or wherever it is. I'm being sort of jovial for effect, really. Actually, if we're going to enable agentic across the enterprise, even if you've got multiple agentic AI platforms, you need a common collaboration platform that allows the agents to spin up, allows the agents to engage the people on that collaboration platform so they can solve problems and innovate.
And I think this is something really important that I know I've mentioned before, which is confidence. It's the adoption. I liken it to the adoption of cloud. 10, 15, everyone was really nervous. Nobody wanted to do it. Now, you don't think about anything but you don't have data centers typically. And I think to your point about coming with use cases, showing where it's working in other markets, showing where the impact has already been seen in a secure fashion, will have that snowball effect like cloud did, 10, 15 years ago. But leading with what those companies believe to be the impactful kind of use case, and us coming with, and here's how it's working in other places, starts to have that snowball effect within the market.
You made a really interesting, one word there, which was secure. Yeah. And I think that's part of the problem.
Yep.
It's again, going right the way back to what are we seeing?
Yeah.
Some organizations are still not sure.
Yeah.
Do they trust it? Is it secure? Going back to your point around the security piece. And that is a big, big challenge. And that's probably one that needs to be addressing is within these organizations, because they're so used to locking their data down.
Yep.
You mentioned about the airlines having this gigabyte data. It's so valuable. It's valuable data. That's their secret sauce, isn't it? They don't want the risk that they start putting that out. They stick that into an agent. That agent that can take it anywhere. And it's that unknown factor because it is moving at a pace. And I think that for us is something that the conversations we're having, as I'm sure you're having, is settling the nerves across the industry to say, actually, it's not black magic. There are secure things there. It is fine.
Do you think that's a geographical thing? Do you think other markets are as sensitive? Or do you think UK is a conservative?
I would say that the UK market, what we're seeing is, are they less trusting? It feels that way.
Yeah.
But like I said at the beginning, we're having conversations. They're having conversations. They're asking questions. They're just not taking that leap.
Yeah.
They're dipping their toe. They're not putting all their data in. We are seeing, globally, some organizations doing it, but nobody's got it right yet. Yeah. I think that's the thing. Yeah. So for me, the message is the manufacturing businesses just have to start doing it. They've got to stop being so, we need the whole solution done. That's where we need to get to.
I mean, Gartner's putting statistics out that say 6% of companies, not manufacturing companies, are doing things that are somewhat critical in production. Yeah. So you're right. Nobody's really doing it. But I also think the numbers of people piloting, looking at proof of concepts, those numbers need to come up in the manufacturing sector. And, the good news for you guys is you guys do handle. There are platforms that don't handle trust to the degree that you guys do, right? I mean, that's a big deal.
And I think that's a really interesting point, because when I think about adoption of AI across the board, manufacturing as well, this is the white-collar industrial revolution, in my opinion. But I think what's happened with the large language models come in. I mean, hands up who hasn't used ChatGPT or, we've all got our hands on. Of course we have. We probably use those types of tools every day in our jobs for a variety of things. But that's the problem in a way, because the C-suite has been using large language models, either paid through their organisation or their personal ones. So data's leaking out of the system in some way through that adoption of LLMs. And then if you're, whoever you are in the business, going to the C-suite and saying, hey, we want to implement AI, without going and saying, but this is enterprise-grade AI with a trust layer, with guardrails around what the AI can do, what it's allowed access to, the data it's allowed access to, what it can think about, the actions that it can take. I think there's a big educational journey to go on with not just manufacturers but other organisations about that, because nobody's going to go into ChatGPT, no C-suite's going to go into ChatGPT and say, hey, go select a new supplier for that turbine blade, cancel my diary on Friday afternoon because I want to go and play golf and call me a car. That's not how agentic AI is going to work in the short term.
But it was the same as, when that move to cloud happened, you mentioned it earlier, people were scared.
Yeah.
People said, that's never going to take off. We would never put an ERP in the cloud. We'd never put that data in the cloud. Guess what? It's all in the cloud because it's more secure. It's easier to manage. So the agentic piece, there has to be that leap of faith around that trust. I mean, we've got the credibility in our business and we can talk to that, but the organizations that within the sector just have to start talking. They have to start opening up and saying, okay, to your point, 6% are trying it with critical stuff. I would suggest probably don't, if it's your first attempt, don't try it with the critical things, but just try something. Prove it. Let's prove it.
But I think you made an interesting point, and we've talked about it. We're talking about the C-suite. We're talking about the CEO mandate. I think for me, this is the first digital program or project that's ever been in the CEO's top of mind agenda, usually dealing with CIOs, CTOs, CDOs. This has become a mandate and investment, a kind of catalyst to change the whole organization for the first time, which is great for the sponsorship of momentum. But it's then, how do you give that level of confidence to a CEO to say, change your business in this way?
So I'll maybe have a couple of examples there. So somebody I know in the manufacturing space, in the aerospace sector, who's leading the AI function in that organisation, was telling me about how they've started with a sort of trusted AI in their organisation, and he's been very clever about it, in my opinion, the way he's gone about it, because he's aimed it at the C-suite.
Yeah.
So the examples he was talking about were, he wants to find out somebody in the C-suite wants to find out what is the performance of a particular site that does whatever it does with regard to something that they manufacture. And the previous process was the guy in the C-suite asks for the data, and then a team of 3 data scientists goes off for a fortnight and comes back and says, well, it could be this or it could be this, depending on whose data you trust coming out of that facility. Right? And that's a problem. What he's done, and I'll come on to why this is potentially a challenge, is they're using an LLM solution, feeding in the most trusted data into a data room that LLM has access to. So you can go and query that data, but it's vast quantities of structured and unstructured data. And of course, it behaves like an LLM. So you ask it the one question, it comes back and tells you the answer, but it comes back and tells you a whole load of other insightful information around it as well. So now the C-suite's getting that information in 2 seconds rather than 2 weeks, which is hugely powerful. Yeah. The challenge for him scaling that is one of, it takes a team of data scientists to go and get all the relevant data to start with, to bring it into whatever the technology room is, to put the walls around the technology room, to build the LLM, etc. So he's saying it's a great success in terms of showing the power of AI to the C-suite within the organisation, but it doesn't scale at the moment because they can't just add more data from their unstructured data around the organisation. They've got to curate that data. So we need a solution.
The one other thing that I'll just add on the manufacturing and kind of a little bit of the friction, I think, and I agree, Chad, with conversations, we can have conversations. But I think when agentic first started to hit, people thought it had to be autonomous, it had to be customer facing. And I think now people are a lot more educated. There can still be a human in the middle. That human can look before it goes out. So if you don't totally trust what's coming back from the AI, you can have a human being look at it. Yeah. But you made that human being more efficient. And the idea of augmenting humans or freeing up, line level people to do other things or handle more things has also opened up, the willingness to kind of look at it. And I think that's an okay solution too, to start with. Yeah. Get confidence in it. Get confidence in what the model is telling you. Then maybe you can move some of the functionality out to fully autonomous. Keep some of it, where a human is still in the middle.
It's really interesting. We were having a conversation this week with an organisation around agents and the digital labour, digital workforce, and explaining to them that there's a general belief that you will never have one agent that does everything. It's not about an agentic AI in your business. It's about treating an agentic AI as an agent or as an employee that has set guardrails. It does a job really well, and then it hands off to the next one. Because what you don't want is one agent doing this, then teaching itself to do that, and then do that, and do that, and do that, because it will never do anything. It will never finish. It will just keep going. And it's how do you manage those? So when we look at this agentic world, I think it's about augmenting it with humans. There will always be humans in the mix, always. And this comes back to the point around the CEO agenda. Why is it so different than an RPA? Right back to your question about an hour ago, is actually AI and agentic is across the business. Yeah. ERPs, if you were talking to an intern in a business, they wouldn't even know what an ERP was. Nowadays, they know what AI is. They know how important it is. I think it's across the business. So going right the way back to the initial conversations, we've got to help these organizations understand where it fits with humans, with agents, and how to manage it. And they just got to get started. I think is probably the main thing.
I think the point that you made, too, about doing some work and then passing off, we work as human beings in a team environment in most of the things we do. We should be thinking that way about how agents will work together to solve problems. Yeah. This is the work that this agent does. Yep. This one does this, and they work together to get to the end solution. Yeah. I think that's really important.
Yeah. We talked a lot about agentic, but some organizations just aren't ready for agentic. They know they want to get there, they want to do it. And Bill, you talked, a while ago about the challenges that manufacturing organizations are seeing, at the base level. There's a big gap in the middle. Yeah. What are you seeing, not just UK, but globally? How are organizations approaching it? What are they doing? Are there wins that they're having? How are they kind of breaking it down? What could help?
So, from my perspective, if I'm coming into a place where I don't really know much, I want to understand, what are you doing from a sales and a service standpoint? And I mean the broad definition of service. So I mean, how are you servicing your customers? How are you performing field service on your assets and your products? Because I think, to your point, there's still a lot of opportunities to modernize the way you're servicing your customers. And I believe that there are significant opportunities around AI enablement around the functional area of service. I feel the same way about sales. A lot of organizations have done things in sales. Doesn't mean it's done right. Doesn't mean you've got intelligence around it. Doesn't mean you're doing good white space analysis and some of the other things that are more sophisticated. But you're probably doing some level of sales automation, not a ton of greenfield net news of those. But I still think there's huge opportunities around service. So I try to start there because I do think sales and service still lend themselves to all the things that we talked about earlier. Rapid use of agents and agentic and AI quickly. A lot of the data already lives in Salesforce, the preeminent CRM tool. And then you get to take advantage of trust, same tooling, speed around building agents, things that you're not going to get from one-off kind of niche agentic providers. Yeah. Think about, some of the competitive offerings. You don't get that tooling. Business people can build agents. You can learn how to build agents in days. I know because I did it. And so I look at those areas and what do you have right now and how can I help you with that? And again, even if you have a mature selling tool, Sales Cloud, let's say, there's still things that it might have tech debt. It might not be taking advantage of all the new stuff. It might not have intelligence wrapped into it. So there's still things to do. But I think those are easy areas to look at. How can I give you, Mr. Client, business benefit, true impact, results on what we can do with AI and data? And I want to understand what you have from a data standpoint too. Where is it? How much of it do you have? Who do I need to work with to get it, to unlock it? In terms of where it sits. Is it in, Databricks, Snowflake? You already have Data Cloud. Is it in the hyperscaler world? Azure, AWS, GCP. And I think that goes to how can we help you go quickly by understanding that, right? Understanding what you're using in those areas and how can we help you through the process of embracing generative and even predictive. There's still huge predictive opportunities.
There's huge opportunities in predictive. We talk a lot. So I think we've got the scales of customers that we're speaking to. All of them want to look at agentic, but they're all afraid to get there. But the big thing we talk about is this bit in the middle, this modernizing their commercial operations. And for us, that's the biggest conversation we have with every organization. It covers pretty much everything you've discussed. But is it just automating a workflow? Is it using predictive to get there? Is it then going on to generative? I think there's always a journey. So for us, I would say 90% of the conversations we're having always come back. They could start agentic because the CEOs told me I need to talk about agentic, and then we come back, to this modernizing their operations. But that is, for me, fundamentally where we need to connect some of those back office systems, the MES systems, the supply chain systems, into making that data visible to the salespeople, to the service people, so that they can help drive the business forward. And that for me is probably one of the biggest disconnects that we've helped organizations overcome, is just openness of data and trying to connect it. I mean, not sure if anyone else has got.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting point. I think agentic for me has just been a catalyst to something that was already being discussed.
Yeah.
I talked back earlier about opportunities and threats drive transformation from a technology perspective. I think within the manufacturing sector, particularly in the large ones and the UK ones, small client base with high revenues that are long-standing, typically, not to generalize, but typically. And therefore, there hasn't been that impetus to change. There hasn't really been a true need to invest heavily for competitive advantage or protection. We're going to see it in the implications of tariffs and how that has a knock-on effect. So all of a sudden, it becomes an opportunity in sophisticate your commercial model through easier ways to do business through technology, becomes an opportunity, but you're also protecting yourself against a threat. So I think agentic has become an even bigger imperative for do it now. But actually that digital transformation, the refactoring of your commercial engagement model through portals, through technology has been there. But I think, to your point, it's in every conversation now. It's because I need to do it now. Like the impetus to change is revved up as a result of competitive landscape, but also the use of agentic technologies in other global markets.
Yeah. Guy, I'm curious your thoughts on this topic, because we talked earlier about, digital thread, digital twin, those kinds of things. Just going back to what Chris and I were just talking about in terms of predictive, you guys revolutionized software business, software as a service. I'm seeing a lot of manufacturers now starting to offer their products as a service, med tech, pure industrial manufacturers, where you pay by how much you're using it, right? And therefore, maintenance and understanding maintenance and predictability and keeping the asset running is really important, because if it's not running, you're not making any money. And I still think, Chris, to your point, there's a huge opportunity around predictive. Guy, I'm curious what you think there.
I think that's a really interesting point, because if we look at, and I'm going to use their name here, Rolls-Royce Aerospace, they invented the subscription model, the service model in like the 1950s or 60s, I think it was, when they offered power by the hour for their engines. So if you're a customer, you pay when the engine's in the air, generating thrust, pushing along a plane, and you don't pay when it's on the ground. So this has been around for a long, 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 long time. So I don't think that's new in manufacturing, but I think what is new is how organizations are trying to monetize it. Yeah. So I'm not necessarily convinced that the car club, car as a service, subscription service for cars has been a roaring success anywhere other than maybe urban environments. I don't think it works in other environments particularly well. But that's the subscription model. I think some of the points I wanted to make were maybe around the preparedness for organizations for this, because what we're talking about is innovation in organizations. So if we compare where we're going now, we think with agentic AI, and maybe where we were with mobile 10 or 15 years ago. 10 or 15 years ago when mobile technology came through, you could sit down in a business and go, right, what's your mobile idea? And understanding not a volume of ideas was never the problem. Everybody had 10 ideas for a mobile app that you could build and deploy. That was never the issue. The issue that the CIO had, and actually the board had, is the same one they're about to have with agentic AI, which is how do we enable rather than control and destroy innovation in our organization by providing our business with the tools that they need to innovate, with the guardrails around them to allow them to innovate, try things, experiment, succeed or fail, and that's okay, and then move on to the next thing. And I think when we look back at mobile, just coming back to the automotive example, I think one of the large UK OEMs had something like 12 apps on the App Store for one of its brands, which was the nightmare scenario really from a customer experience position, because if you wanted to do one thing, you needed that app, and it looks and works slightly different from this app, etc. Now they've got one app, obviously. We would do that. But I think we're going to go on a similar journey. I don't think it's going to be exactly the same with agentic AI. We need to enable organisations to innovate and do things within some safety rails. And then at some point we need to take stock and go, well, actually, that's brilliant. And now we know a lot more about how we solve business problems with the technology, but we're going to take a step back and then go off on a slightly different, not completely different, but, just course correct when we need to. Does that make sense? And I think the CIO has a really tough role there, because what they want, I think, is this concept of citizen developers. And you have to enable those people, particularly in manufacturing organisations. And you and I were talking about earlier, manufacturing organisations employ engineers. These people are naturally curious, outcome focused. They want to think things through. They want to make things happen. And working with those people is very different.
But to your point as well, the manufacturing industry has always been innovative. They've driven product change. They've driven change. They've been around for a long time. The scary thing for them is how do they innovate on top of the business they've got, and that's the bit that we're finding now. I think the majority of organisations we're speaking to are open to the ideas, to your point, around agentic, but it's actually kicking off other programs internally just to get started. And I think that's the piece that's the most challenging. It's not just those guardrails on agentic; it's those guardrails on all of their business process.
And it's guardrails and it's also facilitation. So what we find in the work we do is they have the ideas, to your point about what mobile apps build. They have a better understanding of what's going to benefit their business than we will ever do. But what we do have as an industry and as a company is the different skill sets that are typically not in those organizations. So we talked about data scientists, UX designers, experience designers, technical architecture. It's very hard for every company, manufacturing or wider, to build an incumbent capability to put those great ideas into an integrated part of that business. And no company really wants to build that full capability. So guardrails and facilitation to make it a reality is where we're seeing a lot of our work.
Why don't I just challenge you on that a bit? Because that's why we're here, I think, to have sort of a fairly open conversation. So talking to somebody else in the industry, this is a couple of years ago now, who'd had a lot of success with an analytics platform in their organisation. And what I saw from him, he's not an empire builder. He's an enabler. And I think these are the people you need in the central roles. And what he did was didn't build a central data science team under him. They all reported into him. I've got 100 data science people, and that's what validates me in the role. He put 1 or 2 data science people in the departments, not sitting in IT with a departmental role, in the departments, sitting there, talking to the people, understanding what was going on in the business, looking themselves at what the day-to-day problems were. And that led to huge adoption of the analytics platform, common data platform, and huge innovation within that organisation around what analytics could do for them. Because strangely enough, putting the person with the technology skills next to the business worked really, really well. So I think when you say we want to build, we do want to build, but where do you build it?
Absolutely, and I don't disagree. I think we've all seen that RAD development in banks with rapid application developments next to the analytics, but they're quite tactical areas. I think what we're talking about with enterprise digital transformation or agentic enterprises, it's a hybrid skill set that's needed to make that product, app, agent a reality. So I think that's where a consultant working with a UX designer, working with a technical architect, with a product person, like these are all different characteristics, all different skill sets. How do you synthesize that into one deliverable? And not just one deliverable, a constant deliverable output. Because all of this is incremental and continually evolving. It's a continuous event.
I think.
Do we see that, though, as probably one of the biggest challenges for our customers? Because it probably is, isn't it? It's that different mindset.
Yeah.
Being agile, some of these organizations have never worked in an agile way, and actually being hybrid and relinquishing a bit of control. To your point, it's going to take, it's unrealistic to expect that these organizations that they're talking to, they're going to be to upskill themselves as quick as possible. We work in the industry. We are leading the way from the Salesforce side on the technology, and we are constantly training day in, day out. These organizations have to know their business. Yeah. So I think for me, one of the key things that collectively our industry, you guys, us together, have to help these organizations understand they've got to let us in, to work together. We don't want to take control. We do want to enable you, but they need to realize that what they do is really good, what we do is really good, and together we can help them be great. And I think that probably is one of the biggest challenges, exactly to your point around those different teams.
I think, Chris, that's a perfect point. And I agree with the comment the guy made around these are engineers, right? So they're engineers with a job. You're Salesforce, and you're constantly training, and you're getting educated on what the competitive landscape is. But we talked a while ago about no one vendor is going to own all of the agentic, right? So whatever you're using in your infrastructure, there's going to be multiple agents involved, multiple agentic providers. So you need, and as a CEO of a consulting firm, in a space that is evolving every day, you're staying trained every day.
Yeah.
We have to be trained on what some of the other options are,
and that's
so that we can guide customers. It's a daunting task in an environment. Think about the evolution. We're coming up on when Dreamforce was last year. That was when Agentforce was launched. Think about the evolution of that product in the 1 year that it, voice now, headless. I mean, things are changing.
But that's what our customers
week
need
to week.
They need us.
Like
they need you. They need us as and I'll go back to the point I made earlier around collaboration. It's about businesses understanding how to collaborate in their business and the technology. It's us understanding that we're going to have to play nice with the AWSs, the Microsofts, the SAPs, because it's an ecosystem world. But you guys are there in that business to help be the trusted advisor for the customer to say, actually, use that agent there, use that agent there, use this technology and bring that together. And it has to be, as we're asking organizations to trust us with their data, we need to trust them, we need to trust you. It has to be a three-way.
And I think the benefit for the manufacturing sector is they're not the first sector to do this. As consultancy businesses, myself, financial services, retail, energy and commodities, they're a little bit ahead in that full enterprise transformation. And we can take those lessons learned, the best-in-class approaches, and use those skill sets in what we've learned over the last however many years and bring it into this sector as a structure for success.
Sorry, Guy, you had a point.
I was just going to talk actually about our platform. So I haven't been with Salesforce very long, a couple of months so far. And our training is really good, self-guided, structured, but only about Agentforce. There's some reading to do, but actually to pass the courses, you have to do some hands-on configuration of an agent. So if we step back a second from the maturity curve, it's not, these are famous last words, aren't they, when Chris asked me to do it in the office tomorrow. It's not that difficult in the Salesforce platform to design and configure an agent. It's low code. You don't need to be a coder. It comes back to the sort of citizen developer piece. So where am I going with this? So I think within what we're going to see in terms of this innovation layer, I think, is we're going to see innovation within roles, i.e., we're going to see accounts payable clerk or customer service agent. We're going to see that level of sort of innovation. And then we're going to see innovation within functions. So how do we then actually get this customer service rep talking to this customer service agent talking to this service agent within, say, the Salesforce platform. But then to our point about, this Salesforce isn't an island. We exist with lots of other sort of strong technology partners. That's the point at which I think you then need the wider development capability to say, okay, we're going to integrate the Salesforce field service solution with the inventory solution within SAP, for example, within our organizations. And that's when you need the IT function sort of doing the cross-agent connection and enablement. That's when I think it'll get a little bit more complicated.
Yep. Couldn't agree more about the platform. And, having built agents in other platforms, it's an extension of the tooling that already exists, right? I mean, you're using Flow, you're using Process, and you're enabling an agent, right? So couldn't agree more.
So what we're saying is building agents is easy. That's fine. But the problem is which agents do we build?
And what are they going to do for your business?
What are they going to do?
Right. Yeah.
And I think this is where we have to look. And I think probably on a weekly basis, I'm speaking to 4 or 5 customers about this. And it's just about having, everyone throws around the word workshop, but it's just, what do you need? If somebody could give you an assistant today, what would you ask it to do? I'd ask it to do that. Okay, let's build it. Yeah. What would you do today? Oh, let's just build it. It is that easy. We've opened up, and you mentioned Dreamforce. We've opened up our platform to allow it to be available to everybody to just go and get building agents. just start building them. Go right back to what you said before. Only 6% globally are putting critical applications in agents. Okay, we'll just do the non-critical ones. Just get it to your expenses. Just start to use it, because that's going to grow that momentum across the business. And it's going to just free up efficiency, productivity, coming right the way back to what we were saying before. Actually, the biggest opportunity for everybody today is the bit that they've been not really paying attention to the last probably 10 years, those commercial operations in the middle.
100%.
That, for me, is probably the next step for most businesses.
I agree.